So whatever, I can do to help, I will do. As my sensei Zen master says, we'll do questions and responses. I don't know if I have answers for all of you, but I'll certainly be able to offer my own response, and hopefully that will be helpful to you. I don't know if you, I spent, I've been a working medium for quite some time. I do quite a lot of private sessions. I do, and do a lot of teaching now as well. I did 4 years training at the Arthur Findlay College in Britain, and have 3 certificates, 3 awards from there in mediumship, healing mediumship, and speaking. And I've been teaching ever since. I teach at the Edgar Cayce Centre, the Arthur Conan Doyle Centre in Edinburgh, and various other places. So I will do my best to offer you whatever knowledge and wisdom and experience I've garnered over the years to help you in your development. So I suppose I'll just open the floor if any of you. Right. So, one of the things that is sort of a pet thing of mine is really just sort of moving beyond just sort of the evidence of a session. I feel like I've, within my own mediumship, I know when I started my own mediumship first, the way it was taught was called the CERT method. I don't know if any of you have heard of that, where you had like a list, like literally on a whiteboard, of information you had to go get out of the communicator. Which is all fine, because we really do need tangible and verifiable evidence to know we're speaking to. But the way I work within my own mediumship is I allow that information. I always ask for specifics that will be recognizable to the sitter. But I do try to just allow the communicator decide what those pieces of information are. And what that does is it allows for the character to come forward, talking about and mentioning things that are meaningful to them, rather than me. I used to be a journalist, rather than me sort of flinging a bunch of questions. Tell me this, tell me this, tell me this, tell me this. It's amazing how much, given the space, the actual complexity and the nuances of a character and their memories and these details and their quirks and idiosyncrasies can actually emerge when we give them that kind of space. So that's the way I work with my mediumship. That's the way I teach mediumship as well. And you'll be amazed at the details that can come out of that are even more meaningful, because the person had the space to, sort of pick up, rather than being asked, give me these sort of 6-8 things, just allowing them to choose. And of course, it takes a lot of training, and it also takes a lot of trust to be able to say, okay, handing over to you. But I think at the end of the day, it makes the power and the presence of the communicator so much more palpable when they have the space to be able to discuss what they want to discuss. The other thing too is that not, we're told a lot, oh, we need to get the relationship in the passing condition and whatnot. Sometimes people don't want to talk, they're not ready, and they don't want to talk about how they pass. They want to talk about something else. So I really just try to build the power and get out of the way and let the communicator convey the essence, and just really try to embody the essence of what it is, of who they are and what it is that they want to say. If you were in the spirit world and you wanted to come and talk to somebody here, how frustrating would it be to have somebody flinging a load of questions for you, giving you the check boxes of details that you have to share? It wouldn't be so frustrating, because you have come all this way, you've waited all this time. This is what you want to say. Mediums, we're here to mediate, not to control. It's to allow that person express what are those really precious words that they really want to say, and to give them the space to do that. So I would love, if you fancy it, when we go into the breakout rooms later, to really sort of work with that idea of embodying the essence of the communicator and allowing them to choose what it is that they want to share, because they will know better than anybody what details will be highly recognizable to their loved one. And I had somebody recently came with the strawberry ice cream. Now somebody comes along, and I've got a dad here with a husband with the strawberry ice cream. And it sounds very generic, but who am I to decide what's generic? But apparently this husband was obsessed, loved strawberry ice cream. Just the minute you said strawberry ice cream, his wife started laughing, because of course it's the first thing he'd come in with, is a strawberry ice cream. So it's not for us to decide what is and is not good or valuable evidence. it's it's the old sort of way of teaching. I really would love when you go into practice or later to be able to just ask them, what is it about you that will tell them exactly, so they'll know without a doubt this is you, and allow them choose that piece or that gem of information. So if you want to work with that later, it's a nice experiment to see how you get on with it. Anyway, in the meantime, I'll just open the floors.
I have a question. I'm so very new to this, and I don't even know how you get started with communicating.
Right. Well, the first and most important thing when it comes to mediumship, I'm a huge proponent of sort of the development of the whole medium, not just getting information. The medium themselves needs to be a good medium, right? So the first thing that I always teach, and actually any of you, if you want, I do have these practices and they're all freely available on my website in our community, is the first thing is to be able to, first of all, meditate, not just for the mediumship, not for the communication necessarily, but for your own ability to still the mind and for your own ability to recognize when your own mind is moving. Because a lot of the time with mediums, I notice today, and I've sat in sessions with this, the medium who is able to, who understands when their own mind has come in, or when their own mind has moved away from the communicator and is psychically or just analytically offering information. The best way and the best foundation to avoid that happening later in your mediumship is to have a nice mindfulness meditation practice. It'll also help you profoundly in your own life. And I have a Zen background, so I've practiced Zen for 20 years. So I'm a huge advocate of first sitting for our own well-being in meditation. And then building on from that, the next thing would be to sit with an attunement practice. And you can do these simultaneously, where you actually learn to build the power, to make that, to create the power and to create the space for the discarnate spirit to be able to come in and telepathically blend with you and share information with you. And that requires sort of change. Well, they say it requires changing your vibration, but it certainly requires shifting your awareness into an altered state. And from within that altered state, you're in a position where communication can happen. So that's the first thing to do for me. And that's the first thing I did when I was training. And I'm still a huge advocate of it, is meditation for your own well-being, for your own stillness of mind, to understand the movement of your own mind so that you know if it's interfering or not. It's essential. And the more advanced you get in mediumship, the more essential that becomes. And then also an attunement practice to be able to hold the power. I always find that some of the best mediums are also healers. And it comes from being able to sit within the power and just to be open to receive with that sort of humility and without ego. And I always find that I think the best mediums I've ever come across are also healers. So does that answer your question, Ramona?
It did. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, and feel free to go. There are attunement practices and meditation practices on my website, and they're free to community. So if you want to sit with them, because people always ask that, how do I make that connection? Well, first you've got to build the power. You've got to be able to move yourself into an altered state. So those practices are there if you want to try them out. So feel free.
So Karen. So you talked about trying to distinguish between picking up something psychically from someone that you're giving a reading for, and actually communicating with someone in spirit. And you talked about the quality of the communication as being different, like I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you talked about the more emotional quality from the spirit world. And I'm just wondering, how does that manifest in images for you that you can then communicate something to someone you're doing the reading for?
Okay, so first, mediumship is not reading. We're sort of
Okay.
sitting with spirit. And psychic work is the reading, because we're actually reading for the person in front of us. We're reading their aura, we're reading cards for them, we're reading something for them. When
Okay.
we're working with somebody in the spirit world, we're not reading them. We're sitting and listening, communicating with them and translating what everything that they're giving us telepathically into English to communicate. It's not a reading, it's mediating a conversation, really, is what mediumship is. That's why in England in the college it's called a sitting. We're sitting with the spirit. So that's the first thing.
Right.
The next thing is that there is a subtle difference between psychic information and mediumistic information. And it takes quite a lot of practice and training to identify that and to becoming very, very familiar with your own energy. And I know an exercise that I had to do many times, which was brutal when I was training in the college, was you would have to sit with, you would get two names, a living person and a dead person, connected to the person, your partner you're working with, but you wouldn't know who was who. You wouldn't know which was alive and which one was dead, which one was in spirit and which one was incarnate. But it was remarkable. And this is a fantastic practice. I do recommend it to any of you, if you've got partners to practice with, to try this, is that it is absolutely remarkable how much information you can psychically get about the person who is the name of the person who is alive in physical form. It's phenomenal, the amount of information you can get, for both of them. It's a really, really good practice, because if I'm working now, I'll know, wait, that felt a bit off. I think I might have picked that up myself, which is okay, as long as you can tell the person you're sitting with, wait, that, because they're going to put more weight into what the husband or father or whatever they say, over what you say. It always happens in a sitting that you're going to pick up something psychically. But when you do a lot of these practices, you learn, when did I just pick up something psychically, and when did I get that from dad or whoever? And you can say it to the person, and then, oh, you know what? I think I got that. I picked that up myself. Let me go back to your dad. And it's okay if that happens, once you know it's happened and you can be honest. To me, then it's ethical. You're able to be honest with your sitter,
Can you feel the difference in the quality of?
Yeah, so let me finish explaining how it works.
Sure.
So the more you sit with these exercises and these practices, and you could be working for 10 minutes with the name of the living, getting loads of information, thinking, I'm a fantastic medium. And then you shift over to the other person and you do the same thing. And then you'll notice over time this very subtle difference between the information and the energy that comes from the name of the person who's discarnate and the name of the person who's incarnate. And the only way to know it is to do it, and to do it repeatedly, to do it quite a number of times. And at some point with both, you'll go, wait, this feels a little different from this. And the energy of the person discarnate, because there's an intelligence there, will start to take on more of a life of its own, will start to take on, and it will start, information will start coming to you that just sort of has a little flow to it. Whereas when you're working with the psychic information, sort of jokes, it's a little slower, doesn't have the same vibrancy, but it's very, very subtle. And I recommend to all of you, really, it's a great practice to do with, if you've got partners, or even if you want to do that this evening. It's really a great practice, because what allows you to do is to start to move towards feeling what the essence of a communicator is, as opposed to just picking up facts, picking up the sort of psychic hits that we get as well. Does that make sense, Alice?
Yeah. So, if I'm to understand, there's a quality that you're able to distinguish, just from years of practicing and making a point of distinguishing the difference of the quality, the feeling.
It'll feel different to everybody. And I just want to just to comment on one thing you said, was when you're working with the essence, there's this misnomer that, if you just sort of, unless you're asking for loads of facts, all you're getting is emotional information. That's not the case. That's not the case. I think a lot of you know I'm a writer. I find that as a writer, naturally people's stories my mind tends to just get the story, the person's story, the bigger picture of what they're trying to convey. It's just because it's from being a writer. And then also the emotional. So for example, come with the pink ice cream. is because this guy, this husband, one thing he really missed about being in the spirit world was the strawberry ice cream. Do you know what I mean? He's being funny about it, but you know, that's emotional evidence, but it's also an image.
Right.
Every single piece of information you get mediumistically should have an emotional component to it. If you just think, if you go out to dinner with somebody, how you converse, it's the same with the spirit world. How do you converse? You don't sit there and just go, pair of black shoes, right? You might be wearing a pair of black shoes, but you wouldn't just say to the person you're having dinner with, black shoes. You would say, I was out today, I found these shoes, I've been looking, you know how much I love my shoes, I found the best pair of black shoes, look, they're on my feet, you know. Do you know what I mean? There's a little story to everything. Everything has a story. It's the way we communicate since we're born. It's the nature of being human. And so every single thing you see or think or hear or feel has that little story to it. And that's what brings depth to your mediumship. You know, me saying, I've got your husband here and he's showing me a pink ice cream, versus I have your husband here, he's showing me an ice cream. He's dying for an ice cream because he really misses the strawberry ice cream. You know, and she's laughing because she's like, that's typical of him to come in like that. See the difference? There's a difference in the quality of the story there, you know? And this is where we should always be working mediumistically, in the quality of the story that the person is sharing with us. There's always something more to the story there. It's a matter of feeling into it. So we never just get an image. Images always come with clairsentient information. They come with claircognizant information. We somehow just know what they're trying to say. So the easiest approximation I can make to it is if you think of how we dream. You know, in a dream, you see some things, you hear some things, you see somebody, their mouths are never moving, but you know there's somebody in your dream you just dreamt about, there's something going, there's a story in your dream. Now, if you were to take all of those elements separately, it would all just be flat elements that would make no sense. But somehow within the dream space, it all makes sense. Claircognizantly, we all just clear knowing. We know what that story is. And so and that's sort of the way telepathic information communication happens as well. Somebody is sharing their story with us using the different combinations of psychic senses. And so we need to be able to use all those psychic senses together in combination to really be able to feel into the whole fullness of the ice cream or the pair of shoes or the tricycle or whatever it may be. There's always more to that story. And that's what makes the communication really come alive. That's where people really are able to sense the presence of their loved one. There's all of those complexities. You know, there's no point saying, I've got your husband here, he had a good sense of humor.
It's vague. Yeah.
Well, what did he laugh at?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you will find, I've had a husband there just the other day. He came and was actually joking with me, taking the mick out of me because I had said I want blah, 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 blah. And he would start winding me up. He was winding me up. And I was able to say, he's winding me up. But she's like, he wound everyone up.
Yeah,
you know,
that's great.
it was meaningful
Yeah.
because of the texture of the story and the character that was there. So that's what we always want to be striving for in mediumship. So if you do that practice of the live and the dead, you don't tell the person you're working with who's alive and who's dead. Let them just go with it. You'll be amazed. You could work for 30 minutes getting you information about the living person. But the more you do it, the more you'll start to sense the flow of the difference in the communication. The only way to do it is to keep practicing it. Just keep doing it. You know,
Great,
that's
thank you.
the best way to do it. So, all right, beautiful. Susie, thank you, Alice.
Yeah, it's probably as much a comment as a question, Karen, and it's on that point that you've just made. We have to get away from this feeling of the living and the dead. Like, they are still living, they're just out of body, and we have to look at them and speak to them as we would be speaking to anyone who's on this call now. And that seems to work so much better for getting that real essence of the person to just do that mind shift.
Yeah, I've had people come, I always record my sessions so that people can be just very, very fully present with me in the session. And I've had some people come and they spend the whole session with the notebook and pen, and I'm looking at the top of their head and all they're doing is writing notes. And I'm like, you haven't seen your dad here, your husband here, your son here for how many years? Now, if you were to go down to the local Starbucks to have a chat with them, would you spend an hour with them looking at the top of your head and you just writing notes? Be present yourself. So I always record them. If you want to take notes, take them later. Right now, be present in this conversation, and to think of it like a sitting. We're sitting with the spirit. We're sitting in conversation. So yes, exactly, Susie. Who's next?
Karen, I wanted to ask what you think about practicing by myself or by oneself to connect with one's own loved ones, discarnate loved ones that are connected with us.
Yeah, we've actually been doing a series with the Afterlife groups. We did a series. We're doing the last one actually, I think next week. Is it Wednesday or 2 weeks? I think it's 2 weeks, Wendy. I think we're doing it. But it's a different type. It's a very different type of communication. And part of that is because we can't approach it the same way as we approach mediumship, where we're mediating a conversation between strangers, for the simple reason that everything that comes to you in that is something unknown to you. And so you know everything you get is, well, it's not coming from me because I don't know the first thing about it. When you're sitting with your own loved ones, it's very different because there's such a familiarity and there's that it's almost sometimes difficult to know the difference between you and them. So my mother, for instance, after my mother passed, my mother was communicating with me. I couldn't tell the difference between my mother and me because my mother, right? I mean, we were missing her bank card at one point, and I just went up and put my hand in the lining of her bag and took it out. Now, it wasn't like my mother came showing me the bag, showing me the torn lining, it was just that knowing of just go up, put my hand in, found the card was stuck in the torn lining of her bag. You see the difference. And there is that sort of, the closer the person is to us, the more the communication will probably be claircognizance, where we just somehow know something, or it'll be more clairsentient, where you've probably noticed you're just sort of watching TV or something some night, and then suddenly just a feeling of calm or a feeling of peace comes over you for no particular reason. It's because your loved one is there to bring that to you. So it's not, they're not coming with like flashing neon lights. They're coming with something more subtle and more. But because of the familiarity there, sometimes it can be different, harder to know where they end, where we begin, especially if it's a very close related, like a spouse or a child or parent. But it is possible to do that communication. It is possible to communicate like that. I found at this point, we get very, very busy in our day, and it's very hard when we're sort of engaged in the sort of the mundane and running around New York City and dealing with the heat and the subway and the cranky neighbors and the sirens and whatever. I mean, how on earth, right? But I find that it becomes very easy for our loved ones to communicate with us either in dream states or in the hypnagogic state between sleeping and waking, when we're sort of aware and we can remember, but we haven't fully stepped back into the waking world. And you'll often find a sound or a song or an image, something will come to you in that space, and that's a very easy place for loved ones to communicate with you like that. But they're generally there, I mean, my mother would finish sentences, I wouldn't even know she was there, and I would be sort of just very briefly, I was ruminating that to sell our childhood home there recently. And I came back, we had to sell, and I was very upset about it. And I came back to New York, and my mother loved her house. And I was starting in my mind, because, when we think ourselves, we don't think in full sentences. So if all of a sudden interjecting into your head comes a full sentence, the good chance it's not you, right? And so, because that's not the way the mind, which again, when we meditate, we begin to become very familiar with our own mind. But I'd ask her, I was starting to sort of formulate a question like, I wonder if she's happy with who we sold a house to. And before I'd even finished formulating the question, ruminating on it in my mind, it's clear as day, in a full, clear sentence, I couldn't be happier. And that's definitely my mother. But, your mother has got that relationship with you. So I wasn't even aware that she was listening until she answered the question before I even finished asking it. So these are the ways our loved ones, it's a much closer, more consistent type of communication. Also, anytime you turn your thought to your loved one, they can feel that thought touching them. And you've probably noticed yourself sometimes out of the blue, you're just on about your day, washing the dishes or cleaning the floor, whatever. And all of a sudden, just clear out of nowhere comes this very clear thought, a clear memory of your loved one. Well, our minds work by association. And then people think, oh, just out of the blue, I had this thought about my dad or my husband or my son. But that actually is not what happened. What actually has happened there is that they thought of you, and your mind felt that thought touching you. And so there's the subtle ways our loved ones are constantly communicating with us. You know, they don't just go off and start partying in the spirit world and leave you to fend for yourself after being your mother for how many years. Do you know what I mean? They're always going to be there when you need help. And so it's just a matter of being able to be aware of the different ways our loved ones communicate with us. So I hope that answers your question, Jean. We do have one more of that series of 3 afterlife communications for your loved ones coming up. I think it's on August 6th, Wendy, if I'm right. And that's been actually a practice in just what you've just asked me as well. So that's all. Right, thanks, Jean. Ashley.
Thanks, Karen. So one thing that we haven't really talked that much about, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate to, but healing mediumship. So yeah. I'm just wondering, so with evidential mediumship, one of the ways that you can gain confidence, like as a practicing medium, is like, obviously you have to practice, but also when the client or your partner validates what you're saying by responding, oh yes, that sounds just like him or whatever, yeah. You gain confidence, oh yeah, like I'm onto something. With healing mediumship though, and you know, with not that the person doesn't know who necessarily you're and connect it with, and also you go somewhere, like I go somewhere, I don't even always necessarily remember what happened. And so I guess my question is, how can you build that sense of confidence in what you're doing and understand it better if you are somewhere else and there's not people to validate what's happening? Yeah,
it's an interesting question. And really, it's why I always find that the healing mediums are also, any healing medium that's also an evidential medium are usually very, very profound. So a couple of things I want to just say to that. One is, you can actually sit with somebody and do healing with them. You can be in the same room with somebody, but you can also sit in a circle with somebody, and we do this all the time. We can sit in a healing circle even on Zoom, and if you're partnered with your partner, you can work with them. They can actually feel the work, and you can actually feel, if you're attuned to the person you're working with, even on Zoom, you don't have, this is the spirit. This is the stream of consciousness. Geography has got absolutely nothing to do with any of it, So you can sit on Zoom in a healing circle, and you can work with somebody, and you can just attune to them and ask for healing for them. You can so often start feeling what emotions are there that they're grappling with. You can start feeling issues in your own body of what they're grappling with, and that will give you, I really feel like I've got a terrible pain in my lower back. Have you been doing it? Yes, I have. Well, there's validation for you, right? You see what I mean? You can do that on Zoom. We've been doing it for 2 years on Zoom, so you don't have to be in the same place with somebody. So you can, if you wanted, you can do that, within a healing circle, to build your confidence, if you wanted to do that. Ultimately, though, we don't want to be relying on our partner to validate for a few reasons. One is we want to be able to build that. You need to get to a point where your trust in your ability and your trust in the spirit world is what's paramount. Your trust in the spirit world and your trust in your connection to the spirit world is paramount. So you can, if you want to get that initially, But I would really encourage you to try to work on your own trust in your connection with the spirit world, rather than depending on the other person for a few things. One is, a lot of the time, the person in front of you, you'll say something from the person in the spirit world and they'll say, no. And I mean, I've been doing it for long enough that I just say, well, you'll need to think about that because I know what they're saying. I'm not taking it back, But when you're starting off, it's a little harder to say, I know what I'm getting, But the thing is that quite a lot of the time, the person in front of you, they can't remember something. And then I'll get an email a week later saying, oh, I just remembered. If you are relying on the other person to validate your evidence, it's going to be very easy for them to derail you. They'll say, I don't remember, or this or that, or the alternative. The other thing that can happen is you'll get a yes, and then the confidence in the ego will go, oh, well, that's a safe place because I was getting things right to let me stay there. And what's happened, you've gone from mediumship into psychic readings or just into a cold reading. Because the ego wants you to be safe. It doesn't want you to be wrong. It will do, no matter, even if you're not working properly, your ego is going to want you to feel gratified and safe. And we don't want that. Because this is where it gets people into trouble with somebody else controlling your session. Instead of you trusting what you're getting from above or trusting what you're getting within the healing. It's why a lot of people get caught out with mentalists. With mentalists, the people just come in and they just pretend they're something, and it's all cold reading. It's just reading body language, expressions, whatever, and they're guessing what's going on. So you really don't want to give that kind of power to your sitter. You want to be giving that power to your communicator. And if it's within healing, you want to be giving that power to the spirit world or to your healing guides. Because you're putting yourself in a precarious position there to be either controlled or led or derailed by the sitter, or where all of a sudden now this person wants to talk about something, but you got something right and your confidence go, well, I'm just going to, I got right that they wanted to go to Cabo on their holidays, so I'm just going to stay with Cabo. And then you'll end up giving this entire session about Cabo, which was absolutely nothing to what they wanted to talk about. You see, so this is where you want to be. Whether it's healing or whether it's evidential, that's where you want to be. Not being swayed by the sitter. Because half the time they don't remember. And even in a psychic reading, you can give them a bunch of information. You're assuming that they've got the self-awareness to be able to reflect on these insights that you're giving them, and not everybody does. And if they're saying no, and you're getting very profound wisdom from the spirit world to help them, and they're saying no, it's not that you're wrong. There's a lot of the times because the person doesn't have the ability to self-reflect enough yet at this stage of their life to understand the information they've just received. So you've got to trust yourself, the spirit incarnate. You've got to trust the spirit world. That's where the focus should be. Easier said than done. You just got to practice. You just got to work with it. It'll come in time. All right. Does that help, Ashley?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
All right, beautiful. Pam.
Hi. Thanks for letting me be here. I actually am here today because my husband, who passed away 2 years ago, told me to get on this meeting and actually guided me to your video interview that Wendy did a while ago, because he told me that you were going to say something that I needed to hear. And when he was in a body, because my husband was a psychic medium, he's from England, grew up in London, and he always had a question that he would ask people who taught mediumship. How do you tell if the person you're reading is, you're really talking to the person who's crossed over, or you're reading the client? Mm-hmm. And you answered that question in your interview. So he said, see, I wanted you to hear that. And then you also, I believe, talked about us being multidimensional. Mm. So, and that was the second thing. So, and they wanted me to be here today too, just to, I guess, acknowledge that too, because he's come through to me since the day after he passed. Mm-hmm. And has been with me since, and other people have seen him, and he and I have written a book because he told me we were going to do that. And I wasn't a medium. I don't see myself as a medium. I was always more of a healer and a channel.
Mm.
But he helped me build a practice. He helped me write this book that we're about to publish, and he just has a lot of respect for you. And so far, everything you've said, I keep feeling him saying, "Say yes," like, because he was very skeptical about a lot of mediums, to be honest with you, but he had enormous respect in you, and I guess that's why he wanted me to kind of be, and also to ask you if I'm interested in what you're talking about, other people who are having these experiences, because he had me form a Facebook group, and I have about almost 900 people in there, and many of them are having the same kind of contact that I'm having. So we're working with those people and helping them, and so I'm really curious as far as what you've been experiencing yourself out there.
In terms of,
is this becoming more common? Because I'm meeting so many people who are having direct contact with the other side of their loved ones. But many of them are their partners and spouses, and including having physical contact.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's a new thing. I mean, I think this is a very, very ancient thing. It's just that it's that sort of thing that once you become aware of something, you ever notice that? Like you become aware of something and all of a sudden you see it everywhere. It's because you're aware of it, you start to notice it. It's as simple as that. There's.
Is there a new depth to it though? Because it seems like it's more prevalent now. I don't know. I keep meeting people who are having more intense experiences than I'm having, and these are ordinary people. They're not like. It's like mediums, right? They're everyday people. And it seems like it also depends on the loved one on the other side, like how strong they are in coming.
Well, I grew up in Ireland, and people talked about this all the time. So to me, I was very much, I was a war correspondent. I was in Iraq. I was a political journalist. I thought this was all a load of nonsense. And so but I am just sort of from a humanistic basis, is that if we're talking about something, we start to invite and attract those people towards us, so that when our awareness shifts, we start to speak in these ways, and more people that are like-minded tend to gravitate towards us. If you had not had that experience, you wouldn't have met all of these people, because you wouldn't have had that energy that was receptive to all that. So you wouldn't be sitting here asking me that question now, because you wouldn't have come across anybody who's having these conversations. The thing is that once something touches our awareness, and once we have that experience, just as the way we are in life in general, we tend to then energetically start to open ourselves up to attracting more like-minded people to us.
Right. Absolutely.
I don't think it's more common, more profound, deep, or anything else. I think it's just you've stepped into this world, and before you weren't in it.
And maybe more people are ready to talk about it openly, because a lot of people I'm meeting are saying that they didn't feel comfortable saying anything, and the people around them don't really understand. So,
well, they don't burn you at the stake for it anymore.
Oh,
so
no, they don't. But they
helps.
still don't. They feel ostracized by their family, which for some people is just as bad, I guess.
That still happens, but maybe people are more tolerant. I think things like, you start, I can't say one way or the other. What I know in my own experience, you can say, well, there's the Netflix series and this and that. But I know as many people who think that's absolute rubbish. It's confirmed their suspicions that it's rubbish, as people who thought, oh, wow, that's kind of interesting. I must look into that more. I find that when people have their own experiences, that shifts something in their life and in their immediate environment. Lots and lots of people are still being sort of ostracized by friends and I mean, when this happened to me, practically everybody I had known fell away. Practically everybody. So everybody now is more open to this, but only because I had the experience. Had I not had the experience, that wouldn't happen, So, but I do think that's just the nature of how we move through life and through community. We tend to attract people.
It's just great that people are more feeling safe to talk about it and meeting other people who are talking about it, right? And I mean, that's why he told me to create this Facebook group, and it just grew by word of mouth. I actually turned a lot of people away. But yeah, so they and a lot of them come and they said, I didn't know other people are having this experience. So I think that's a great conversation.
Yeah, and it's a good thing about social media is that it can reach a lot of people, you know, from that ordinarily wouldn't have crossed paths, you know, so it just
exactly.
help as well.
But thank you so much for the work that you do, and I really honor.
What was the talk? Oh, it was when my book came out. I think, Wendy, we did that talk. I think that's what it was. About a couple of years ago. It must be a couple of years ago.
I think you've done a couple for us, Karen. I think you've done two, but I'll get the details and put it up for other people as well.
I just know I saw your face, and you have to watch that YouTube. Oh, and by the way, he directed me to another YouTube that Wendy did, an interview with Dr. Jane Bissler. And Wendy, I went on to study with Jane, and I'm a Loving Heart Connections facilitator. Because my husband said, you have to learn this because this is what you're going to do. So I've worked with about 44 clients at this point with Loving Heart Connections. And I love it. It's really helped me.
Beautiful.
Helping so many people. So thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Pam.
Should send us the Facebook group as well.
Oh, sure. It's Supernatural Love and Life After Death. But I can post a link if you guys want. The Supernatural Love and Life.
Put a link in the chat window, Pam.
Okay, will do.
And put your email address if anybody wants to contact you as well.
Sure. Love to have people in our group too, if they just are curious or.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Astrid. Jane Bissler is teaching in September another training, but as long as you've had a Living Heart Connection session, you're qualified to take the training. So
I can't afford it. I don't know when I'll be able to afford it, but I did talk to her in one of these meetings, and she seems like such a nice lady.
She is.
She's
a lovely, beautiful soul.
She seems like it. So I'm anxious to try to find the money somewhere.
I think it's really reasonable. I know it's not
for me.
People,
yeah.
I get it.
Not right now, especially, but hopefully.
hopefully you'll manifest that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks, Pam. Susie, you had another question, did you?
That's better. On that topic you were just talking about, it seems like more people are having that awareness of things happening around them and are willing to ask the question of what it was, like to search for explanations. I've got I can only talk about Australia, and I can only talk about sort of my local area, but I've got a few people here that have been brought up very strong Catholics who had some experiences, and they've had this tussle between what the church has told them and what they feel is right, and they're willing now though to ask those questions and to search. And it does seem to be like the ball is rolling, that people are moving away a bit more from the science is God to, hey, there's a lot more out there than we actually realize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm doing a PhD on that at the moment. Post-secular spirit. Yeah. So yeah, definitely.
Because we're coming to the end of the hour, and we're going to have to set up some groups. So I'll just ask Karen to maybe sort of finish up this segment, and think about where you want to go from here.
Well, I would say, just to finish up, for anybody who would like to work more with attunement or would work more with sensitizing themselves, do come along to our Saturday Afterlife group, which is on the 6th at 10 a.m. I think it's the 6th, is it?
Yes.
10 a.m. Eastern.
It's always the first Saturday of the month.
Yeah, and this is the last in the series of 3. So you're all absolutely, we've had a lot of people register, so do come along early if you want to come along. If you want to use it as a way to communicate with your loved ones, you certainly can do that. If you want to use it as a way just to build up the power of your own attunement to work with the spirit world, you can use it for that as well. But I would invite you all along to that. And in terms of going into practice rooms now, the one thing I will say that is really, really key to effective mediumship is the willingness to surrender to the power of the spirit. You know, the willingness to be open to receive, open heart and open mind, to be open to receive. What I would love you to do, what I would recommend for all of you as you're moving into breakout rooms, if you want, is to try that, giving your partner the name of a living person and a discarnate person, and just write them down on a piece of paper, 2 separate bits of paper, and just sit with one in one hand and one in the other.
Right.
Well, I think if people want to do this exercise of the working with the psychic information versus the mediumship information, so you've got the opportunity to do that, you would really only want to work in 2s.